Hello, and welcome to my YouTube channel, Reading Little Blue Books Out Loud. In this video, we're going to start a new Little Blue Book. It is Little Blue Book number 1087, and it is titled The Facts About Fascism. And it's written by Miriam Allen DeFord. So, thanks to Wikipedia and ChatGTP, here is a small description of who Miriam Allen DeFord was and why she wrote the facts about fascism. Now, Miriam Allen DeFord was born in 1888 and died in 1975. She was an American writer and activist, renowned for her staunch opposition to fascism. A committed feminist and socialist, she utilized her journalism and fiction to challenge authoritarian ideologies. In the 1930s, she contributed to the Federated Press, covering labor movements and exposing fascist threats. Her article, The Silver Shirts, in Fight Against War and Fascism, highlighted domestic fascist groups in the U.S. DeFord's unwavering stance was evident when she declared herself unilaterally and actively opposed to fascism, Nazism, Hitlerism, Hirohitoism, or whatever name may be applied to the monster during the Spanish Civil War. Through her writings and activism, DeFord played a pivotal role in combating fascist ideologies in America. So, very important lady. And that's why she wrote Little Blue Book number 1087, The Facts About Fascism. And we're about to start. So here we go. Also, the copyright date in most of these is generally illegible. You can't read it. It's either that or it's not printed there. This one was like that. And in reading this Little Blue Book, I found out when it was written and exactly the month. So this Little Blue Book was written in 1926, May of 1926. So this Little Blue Book was 99 years old last month. So here we go. The facts about fascism. 1. The origin of fascism. The fascist movement, like so many other developments, is the child of the World War. It is doubly the child of that bloody conflict, for not only did it have its actual origin in the struggle over Italy's participation in the war, but its violence, its unbridled imperialism, its frank cynicism are all born of the spirit that swept the civilized world between 1914 and 1918. Now remember, this is written in 1926, so World War I, or the World War as they knew it, wasn't even 10 years gone yet. In another sense, the history of fascism is the history of Benito Mussolini. In this book, however, I shall deal exclusively, as far as is possible, with fascism as such, leaving the story of its leader to another volume, The Truth About Mussolini, Little Blue Book number 1088, which I have and I will be doing after this book. Already in 1915, when Italy was still officially a neutral nation, there was a strong party of so-called interventionalists. Included in their ranks were many socialists and laborites, men who fell for the war, as did so many former internationalists in all the interested countries. Mussolini was among these. But at this period, perhaps the most prominent figure was the poet and playwright Gabriele D'Annunzio, whose spectacular career had run the gamut from anarchist to mystic. Now he was agitating for the conquest of Fiume by Italy, and the interventionists were mainly in sympathy with him. Gradually, there arose a loose sort of organization known as the Fascists for Revolutionary Action. Their function was largely propagandistic, and they attracted little attention outside of Italy. But on March 5th, 1919, long after Italy had joined the Allies, and nearly 4 months after the armistice, Mussolini and 53 others formed the Fascisti di Combattimento. They were in agreement with D'Annunzio and his Fume project, and they were at this time mildly Republican in sentiment. Their name, their ceremonies, even their battle cry were D'Annunzio's invention. We're gonna take a hydration break. Hydration break brought to you by my friend Maddie. Hydrate, Maddie. All right. The name fascisti, with its derivative noun, fascimo, comes from the ancient Roman fasces, the axes surrounded by a bundle of sticks carried by lictors as a sign of office and to indicate the state's authority to execute criminals. These have become the official symbols of the modern fascist. Their salute is the raised hand of the Roman legionnaires, but their battle cry, Asia, Asia, Alala, is not Roman, but Greek. Their costume, besides the famous black shirt, consists of a black or red fez ornamented with the gilt fasces, or else a black trench helmet and military breeches with black spiral puttees. The fascist party is always a militia, says the first article of their disciplinary regulation, issued in October of 1922. This militia is divided into the Principali, the black shirts of the first line, and a triari, or reserves. 8, 10, or 15 Principali constitute a squadra. 3 squadras make up a manipula, commanded by a decurion. 3 manipulas form a centauri, under the command of a centurion. 3 centauris compose a cohort, led by a senari. 3 to 6 cohorts are a legion, whose commander is the consul. 11 legions form a group of legions under a group commander. I'm using English plurals to avoid the mixture of Latin and Italian names. The system is essentially that of the Roman army. All Italy is divided into 12 zones under the supervision of an inspector general. Such is the fascist army in its ideal formation. Its official song is the Song of the Arditi, the shock troops of the Italian army. During the war, many of the fascist leaders were officers of the Arditi, notoriously a hard-boiled lot. This song has as its chorus, and it's written in Italian, I'm not even going to attempt to do that, and it says it may be literally translated, Youth, youth, springtime of beauty, from fascism is the salvation of our liberty. Just what meaning fascism gives to such harmless words we shall see later. Moreover, the really favorite song of the fascist is by no means so mild. It deals with daggers and bombs, and their efficacy when used freely against dissidents. One real point the fascist hymn does make, however, and that is the emphasis it lays on youth. Nearly all the fascist leaders are young, of the generation which grew into its first manhood with the war, and the vast majority of its leaders is the same generation. Mussolini himself is only in his early 40s, and D'Annunzio, the only elderly man prominently associated with fascist history, was thrown over long ago. The official oath also is deceptively mild in its terms, if its implications be overlooked. It reads, "In the name of God and of Italy, and in the name of all those who fell in behalf of Italy's greatness, I swear to devote myself wholly and forever to Italy's welfare." But we must remember that the fascists alone are to be the judges of what constitutes Italy's welfare. The fanatical spirit of those early days is reflected also in such local oaths as this from the province of Placenza. And here's the oath. By the, by the blood of our 2,000 martyrs, whom we invoke as witnesses and judges of our actions, we, the black shirts of Placenza province, swear that for 1 year, first, we will not wear on our persons or keep in our houses anything made of gold, silver, or precious metals or stones. Second, we claim for ourselves the privilege of working ardently without pay for the good of our country. Third, we renounce all worldly amusements which are not expressions of civic joy for our nation's progress. Fourth, we will give all superfluous ornaments to a fund for supporting enterprises having goodness, civilization, beauty, and improvement as our object, or as their object. This is the kind of sentiment which may inspire martyrs, but in the history of the world, it has been more apt to inspire dogmatists and persecutors. Moreover, when the heterogeneous character of the fascist membership is considered, much as the later developments of fascism will be better understood. In essence, the fascist party is made up of three totally dissimilar elements: extreme nationalist, or the interventionist of war days, syndicalist with anarchistic leanings, and a mixed rabble of place seekers, limelighters, thugs, and hangers on. It would be kinder to say that this last element is to be blamed for the excesses and cruelties of fascism, but documentary evidence of their official nature forbids this. From the very beginning, the fascists worked not only by dagger and bomb, but by ingenious persecutions aimed to make their opponents not only suffer, but also suffer ridiculously. The notorious castor oil treatment is the best known of these. It is said to have been invented by Italio Balbo, one of Mussolini's lieutenants. It consists in the forcible feeding of castor oil to those who refuse to join the fascists or who are known as their enemies. For example, in the early days, the fascists would crowd the theaters and stand up to watch who did not join in the fascist hymn or give the proper salute. These people were singled out later and fed castor oil. If this feeding be considered funny, let the reader note these two letters from Italian writers to relatives in this country and quoted by the Nation for March 28, 1923. They belong to a later period than that of which we are now treating, but the situation was the same from the beginning. Dear brother, on January 7, the Fascisti held in Orsagna their great feast. The mayor had left the town, hoping to placate the 2,000 beasts descending on Orsagna from neighboring places. His mother, a helpless old woman, was forced to drink castor oil. All the citizens were ordered to hoist the tricolor. My father-in-law, who was hesitating, was given 5 minutes' time under the threat of having his house destroyed. Men and women were made to drink oil. A company of fascisti, leaving Sulmona for Castel di Sangro, committed all kinds of abuses. A squad went to Leontrone and compelled the schoolteacher to follow it. He was dragged to the center of the square and forced to drink a quart of castor oil. They held him firm until it took effect, and he was covered with excrement. When they let him go, the poor fellow was more dead than alive. A railroad man was treated in the same manner. When the excrement covered him from head to foot, he was dragged around and forced to cry, "Long live Fascismo." Not very pretty, but I think no one who reads it will again consider the castor oil treatment amusing. Another insulting cruelty, particularly practiced on known socialist and later communist, was to shave their heads and paint on the scalp the Italian flag. One man thus painted was marched through the streets, preceded by a sign reading, "Day by day, in every way, I grow more and more patriotic." The fascists also decided, especially in Rome, that the unionized streetcar conductors were not sufficiently prompt in stopping their cars to let on white-collar passengers. So they stationed a man on each platform to watch the conductor, and if he did not stop soon enough, the fascist hit him over the head with a club. The club, indeed, was, and is, almost as popular as the dagger and bomb. Dr. Sala, secretary of the fascist organization in the province of Alessandria, said in a public address, "Hereafter, the fascisti undertake the administration of justice, adopting different laws from those of the judicial authorities. Whoever is guilty will not be sent to prison, but to the hospital, after being clubbed. If, after such lessons, the veteran offenders still exist, the next time the clubbing will be such as to send them not to the hospital, but to the cemetery." This, of course, was after the fascists had come into power, but it was their spirit from the very beginning. A letter written about the same time as Dr. Sala's speech says, "Your mother is dead. The fascisti killed her like a dog. On the evening of the 11th, she was at home when she heard an explosion. She jumped up and rushed out in search of her son. The fascisti were firing from every direction. Your brother would not listen to her and put on his blue shirt. Your mother rushed out to shield your brother and was shot." But that the same conditions existed a year and a half earlier, 7 months before the fascist coup, is proved by the following abridged story, vouched for by the Anti-Fascisti Alliance of North America. It is midnight on March 25th, 1921, in the quaint old town of Pincara, in the province of Rovigo, northern Italy. Pincara, sleeping under the spring sky, is a picture of peace. But a fascist camion rolls into town, carrying several score black-shirted men armed to the teeth. The camion goes straight towards labor headquarters, the Peasants' League office. The place is deserted. To make sure, however, the fascisti fire several volleys into the hut. Then they fetch the inevitable benzine, and the house is soon aflame. Then the automobile goes to the mayor's home. A simple peasant, he is, and a champion of the peasants' rights. It happens that he is not home. The search begins for the mayor. He is nowhere to be found, but a victim must be had. The suggestion is therefore made that the organizer of the Peasants' League be punished in place of the mayor. The camion speeds towards the house of Luigi Ghirondini, the peasant organizer in question. The house is dark and asleep. It is surrounded, and upon a prearranged signal, several volleys of musket and revolver shots bruise that house. The Gherardini family, awakened, knows immediately what is happening. Reports of similar exploits have come from the neighboring villages. Gherardini rushes to his door, ready to defend it with his life. 50 bullets hit the closed door, and the peasant leader falls dead, his breast riddled by half a dozen bullets. The fascisti, singing their battle hymn, Dagger and Bomb, force their way in and drag the man from his wife's arms to ascertain if the job has been done well. A young son screams for aid and is knocked unconscious by the conquerors. So common are these midnight murders during this initial period of fascist history that the newspapers merely give it a casual line. Also in Pincara, the head of the Peasants' League was murdered after the League office had been burned. And this was the outfit of which the socialist paper Avanti, once under the editorship of Mussolini himself, wrote in August of 1921. The young men of the middle classes took upon themselves voluntarily the task of establishing order in the affairs of the state by the severest and most determined measures, although they might have to break the law in the process. To be sure, in that very month the Fascisti had signed a truce with the Socialists, which they promptly broke. Such was Fascismo in 1921, when General Gandolfo Marchesi, Peroni, and Italo Balbo welded it into a military organization. By the end of the war, it numbered 320,000 adherents. In the spring of 1921, Mussolini was elected to the Chamber of Deputies by a large majority with 31 other fascists. In 1919, he had run against the socialist Turati and had polled only 5,000 votes to Turati's 100,000. In 2 years, the fascists had grown to formidable strength. It is no wonder that Giuseppe Prezzolini, writing in 1922 in Revolution Libertaire, said, "Our future must be the offspring of fascism, just as, in Russia, the future must be the offspring of Bolshevism." By what means the fascists gained and held their control of Italy, which still stands firm at the present writing, we shall see in the next chapter. And I think that's where we'll end, because that's the end of chapter 1. So, this is the end of part 1, or chapter 1, of Little Blue Book, number 1087, titled The Facts About Fascism, written by Miriam Allen DeFord. Thanks for listening, and join me in part 2.